Welcome back. Just about the bottom of the hour. So we've got some new reporting first here on MS Now about the brutally demanding conditions that service members are facing overseas as we wait for some resolution to the war with Iran. MS Now spoke with a dozen family members and sailors and Marines aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, who say they're extremely concerned about the morale, safety, and conditions on that ship. The 5,000-person crew has been at sea for 9 straight months and engaged in combat operations since the beginning of the war against Iran, all the way back in February. Many family members describe their kids or spouses telling them about non-operational toilets, moldy showers, laundry facilities that were broken for weeks, and extended periods with no hot water for showering. The families say their loved ones have described food shortages and standing in line at the ship's store for an hour or more, even while it often lacks basic supplies like toothpaste, soap, and deodorant. Let's bring in MS Now Pentagon reporter Priya Sridhar, who broke that story. Former Acting Army Secretary Patrick Murphy also back with us. Priya, it's a great story. People think about service members, in this case sailors, in a combat zone. They, of course, think about the dangers the enemy may pose. They perhaps think less about just the conditions they have to live with each and every day, sounding, from your reporting, downright miserable and at times maybe even dangerous.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, you know, the Lincoln just set a record in the Navy for having the most continuous days at sea, with more than 200 days underway. They left San Diego in November. They had a brief stop in Guam in December, and then they didn't stop for a port call again until early July, just briefly in Oman, where most of the sailors were able to get off the ship, but they had to stay in port. And really what the families were telling me is they're very worried about exhaustion here. Most of their family members are working 12 to 14-hour shifts. They're depending on their job. They're not getting any days off. And when you talk about a flight deck on an aircraft carrier, this is one of the most dangerous places in the military. You're having high-speed aircraft taking off and landing. You have munitions, weapons, and bombs being moved around at a very fast pace, and the service members are also being exposed to, you know, really loud noises for a sustained period of time, which can really lead to long-term injuries like hearing loss. So when you're talking about exhaustion, when you're talking about low morale, because now this deployment has been extended for a second time and there's no end in sight, they're worried that those things could lead to accidents that could potentially even be deadly. I want you to take a listen to what some of them told me.
They didn't choose to be there. They volunteered to be there. They're willing to be there, and they're doing their best. So they want our support. And part of that support means we have to have the tools to do our job. That means the fuel. That means the food, right? That means the food. That means the toothpaste and the deodorant. That means all of it, right? Now,
I don't think it's the ship is the issue. I think it's our president, it's our government that's not helping the morale. I think the ship is doing what they can do with what they're given. But I think our government needs to be doing more for our military that's sitting over there.
And so, you know, you're hearing from them about exhaustion, but they're saying that, you know, even at the end of their shifts, the fact that these sailors and Marines can't take showers, they can't wash their uniforms. I had some family members tell me that they believe that prisoners and inmates in jail are treated with more dignity and respect than our service members.
So, Patrick, let's get your take on this. What does this tell you about Pete Hegseth's military?
Listen, we're stretched pretty thin, and it's not just, I mean, Priya did a great job in his reporting. Jonathan, the one point she made in her article, which I like to highlight, there's over 10,000 shorties off the USS Lincoln. I mean, you know, in the Pentagon, we used to say, amateurs talk strategy, experts talk logistics. The USS Lincoln is the logistics machine there in the Middle East, you know, pushing out these sorties every day. And it is a very dangerous, you know, job. And these are the ultimate warriors, whether you're a sailor or a soldier. The fact is that you are doing really tough jobs. And so my heart and thoughts and prayers are going out to these sailors and their families. I know they've been extended twice. They're stretched pretty thin right now.
And this is not a new boat. The ship launched in the 80s. Priya, talk to us. It was also a conflict with no real end in sight. Like there's, negotiations off and on. Every so often the president, authorizes some sort of strike. They could be there for a long time to come.
Yeah, and that's something I heard repeatedly from the families as well, is that, they understand that their loved ones volunteered to be in the military, right? They're not expecting to be on a Carnival cruise here. They don't expect buffets. They don't expect, a hot tub. They understand that the conditions are going to be rough. They signed up to go to war. But I think what's lacking here is any clear strategy. And they said, we're ready to do a mission and complete a mission. But what we're failing to understand is what this mission actually is and when is it going to end. So I think really what they're looking for is some goalpost that, they can keep an eye on and some relief at the end of all of this. We had 3 aircraft carriers simultaneously in the Middle East, which hasn't, you haven't seen a military buildup like that since 2003. And this has been a war that has largely been fought by the Navy. When you think about who's been imposing the naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz and who's been launching those airstrikes on Iran. And so, they say enough talk about the stockpiles and the depletion of weapons and the $67 billion